Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny and
Kenny squared.
with the sports on the Positive Tip podcast. Kenny, how are you doing, man?
Um, it's the weather here is crazy. There's snow
Yeah,
on the ground, and a couple days ago it was almost 70.
that's just crazy, man. Yeah, it was 70 here yesterday. It's a little warm. It's gonna get a little colder. We might set a record this winter for least amount of snow ever here in this area. It's been amazing. I think they've only been able to measure a half an inch. Of
Wow.
yeah. So I probably shouldn't have said that because now we're probably gonna get a blizzard or something like that.
Right.
Lots to get into today. So first thing I want to get into is the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 57 in the books. The Chiefs win it again. They are, two times now in the last 4 years. They're the
Yeah.
champions. In this era, man, that's kind of a dynasty. Give me your overall assessment on the Super Bowl. I know it's several days. They already had the parade. A lot of my friends in Kansas City sending pictures, posting pictures of the parade. There was a lot of people there, but that town deserves the type of champions I think the Chiefs are. But give me your overall take on the Super Bowl. I thought it was pretty exciting. What did you think?
Well, I'll start with this. I think it's the most exciting, like the best 58 minutes of a Super Bowl, probably since the 28-3 game.
Yeah,
Um, like the ending was kind of weird. Like a holding call aside, I don't think that really would have made a difference in the outcome of the game. Um, but like just the everything was so exciting, and then basically they just like killed the last 2 minutes to kick a field goal, which like I know it's strategy and all. It's just like, come
yeah,
on.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but when I look at Patrick Mahomes, I think first of all it was a very gutsy performance. He was clearly limited with the ankle, but still
Hurt. Yeah.
scrambling for 25 yards and made the big plays when he needed to. He still had under 200 yards passing, which like when you score 38 points, that's pretty incredible.
Mm,
Obviously, there's a couple of turnovers in there. There was a scoop and score and all that. Um, but when you look at Patrick Mahomes now, he has the most Super Bowls of any like active quarterback now that Tom Brady's retired. I know probably Garoppolo has technically more, but like he didn't like start in any of those games. So um, and I don't know. I think it's still kind of soon to say, oh, well, he's a top five quarterback of all time. He still has only played 5 years, but I think he's moved on from the conversation of is he better than his contemporaries? Because I think most people would say he is. Like no one's saying Patrick Mahomes better than Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts or Joe Burrow at this point. Um, he's starting to try to grow into that. Okay, so where does he land all time? Is he better than Peyton Manning? Is he better than John Elway? Right now, I'd still probably say no, but I don't know. Give him a couple more Super Bowls, and it's going to get very interesting. And like when it comes to like the start of his career, like there really hasn't been a guy that's launched this quickly since Tom Brady. Um, so I think that's interesting. Looking at the Eagles, first of all, I feel for the city of Philadelphia now. They've
yeah,
lost three championships in the last like less than a year.
yeah.
Like they losing the World Series. They also lost the MLS Cup in the
Oh, I didn't
finals,
know
and
that.
then
Okay.
also now the Super Bowl.
Right, right.
Um, so I do feel for them. But you look at the Eagles moving forward. Is Jalen Hurts the best quarterback in the NFC? I think he probably is. I had put this question out there, and I'm going to ask you: who do you think is the second greatest quarterback in the NFC, assuming that Aaron Rodgers is gone? Because it seems like I don't know, you kind of get that vibe that he's played his last game as a Packer.
Yeah,
Maybe going to the Jets, the Raiders. I
yeah,
I would assume that they would send him to an AFC team,
yeah.
but yeah. Well, what would you say?
Uh, you know, I got to really think about that. Uh, don't kill me, but I would say Garoppolo when he's healthy has got to be right up there, and he probably won't be on the 49ers. I am still a Matthew Stafford guy. I think that um, you know, I love what he did. I think he'll be back. I think the Rams will be back in the mix next year. So if I had to choose between either one of those two guys, I'm probably going with Stafford. And I'm putting in the top five if I was to name five, and I don't have five on the top of my head, but I'm going to put Daniel Jones there in the top five, based on what he did, especially in the second half of the year, and then even in the playoffs. I think Dak with Dallas has dropped a little bit in my eyes. So I probably wouldn't put him in there, but I think just if I had to make a decision today, who I would want out of the NFC aside from Jalen Hurts, it would probably be Matthew Stafford still.
Yeah. And I think especially if he can show that he's healthy, I
Yeah,
think he would probably show as like the number two guy. But it's just like, you look at them and the Eagles have a great roster. They are going to have to pay Jalen Hurts, so that's going to kind of affect their roster a little bit.
yeah,
But like, I mean, this team is still really good. Scary
yeah,
for the Giants, but they are
yeah.
still a really good team. So there still hasn't been a quarterback that lost their first Super Bowl that's made it back since Jim Kelly in the 90s. But Jalen Hurts might be that guy.
I thought his performance, of course Mahomes won and he's a winner, but Hurts's performance was probably better than Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
He's throwing bombs to AJ Brown. He's running all over the place. They couldn't stop him when he got into the red zone and near the goal line. He's just so strong and he's fast. Boy, oh boy. And he showed, I don't know if you caught this for a second, he showed like his leadership where it's a head coach is talking trash. And Hurts is like, wait, calm down. Don't get these guys angry and upset. I want to ask you this: where where did the chip on the shoulder come from with the Chiefs? Have you caught all that? How certainly you probably caught Kelsey in post game, and then at their parade they talked about the lack of respect for the Chiefs, and I never sensed lack of respect for the Chiefs. I think a lot of people felt like, hey, Buffalo as well as Cincinnati were right up there or on the cusp, right, of playing with the Chiefs. But I didn't sense that there was disrespect for the Chiefs. Maybe there was, and I missed it. But what do you think caused all that?
I think a lot of people voted against the Chiefs. Like
Right,
even I believe in like a lot of like the pregame predictions, like most people were going with the Eagles.
right,
And even like you look at a lot of the preseason picks, a lot of it was the Buffalo Bills, like you said, or the Bengals kind of going all the way back to the Super Bowl. Um, so I think a lot of people maybe saw them as like, this is a team that's taking a step back, which I don't understand why that's such a crazy thing to think, because this team did lose Tyreek Hill,
yeah,
who was a big part of their offense.
yeah.
And they also had a lot of rookies that were getting like significant snaps, especially on the defensive end. So like, I feel like it's not necessarily disrespect, but like a lot of times when a team loses a lot of pieces, like a big piece like that, you kind of expect them to take a step back. But
Yeah.
that wasn't the case. And I mean, Patrick Mahomes easily just walked in and won the MVP. Um, Most people had probably Josh Allen winning the MVP, or
Yeah,
early on in the year, there was a lot of buzz about Tua winning the MVP. So maybe it was just like, I feel like saying disrespected is a little harsh. Like a lot of people were like, well, this is a good team. We're not sure how good they are, but they proved it.
yeah, yeah. Maybe they need motivation. I don't know. And I don't think Brady and New England needed motivation all those years that they went to a lot of Super Bowls, but maybe this group of guys in Kansas City need that something extra to push them. Andy Reid, where do you rank him now as all-time coach?
I think right now he could be right behind Bill Belichick as
Yeah,
the number two. Um, he's because I think one of the things that made it, because Patrick Mahomes had one incompletion in the second half, and that one incompletion was throwing it like past the end zone, so it was like basically a throwaway.
yeah,
Um, And I think a lot of that is the scheming of Andy Reid. And I think like when he has a now that he has like a quarterback that is like really, really good and like is really and offensively just in general, like the NFL favors offense over defense just in like the rules and everything like that. Like he's really thrived. And I feel like there are times where it feels like he's just having fun out there, like making up crazy plays to see if they'll
Yeah,
work. Like how
yeah,
many times did Travis Kelsey get open? And like he's easily their best receiver. And it was like there was like a country mile. I'm gonna take a term out of there, but
yeah, yeah.
um
It's amazing.
like it seemed like and I think of the one touchdown where the guy goes in completely untouched. Like you're talking about in the red zone. It's not like it was a bomb and he beat him. Like a lot of that I think is Andy Reid.
Yeah, and so their offensive coordinator though doesn't seem to want to get a shot here at being a head coach. Almost immediately the two coordinators from the Eagles were snatched up as head coaches, and yet the guy that's won two Super Bowls and went to another one and drew up a lot of these plays with Andy Reid, who's obviously an offensive genius as well, doesn't get a shot. But that's story for another time, I think. Let me ask you about the holding call. There were quite a few analysts that said that swallowed a whistle at that time, and I've never understood that. Because it's so late in the game that he shouldn't have made the call. What were your thoughts?
Part of me is like if you would call it in the first quarter, you should call it in the fourth quarter. Because like it's still if it's a penalty, it should always be a penalty. But there are times like late in the game where they don't call it. Um, like pretty much on every crazy Hail Mary, there's pass interference. Someone's pushing, someone's shoving. Like it always happens, but you never see someone get called for pass interference on a Hail Mary at the end of the game. Um,
It's true.
I feel
That's
like it,
the point.
like I feel like it was a little bit of a ticky tack call, but I mean, even the defender was like, "Hey, I held him. I hope they were. I just kind of hope they weren't going to see it."
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and truth be told, if it wasn't called, I don't think anyone would be like, "Oh my gosh, that was such a bad hold." Like it was pretty benign,
yeah.
but also, like I had said before, I don't think it really would have made that much of a difference. It just made a chip shot field goal into like a field goal that kind of had to work for.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I do kind of think, yeah, you have to read the room a little bit. Like that was a little bit of a because it I guess it does change the game in this way too. Um, because they got the first down, they were able to basically kill the clock.
Yeah.
However, if that holding call wasn't called, then the Eagles would have gotten the ball back with a couple minutes left, and I think they had a timeout, or I don't remember, but
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they would have gotten the ball back, and Jalen Hurts was hitting these crazy bombs as it was. So, um,
Um, yeah, no, I agree with everything you said there on the holding call. Bradbury, to his credit, he stood up and he said, "Hey, my bad. It was a hold." So I think that I think you got to call it. Whether it's 2 minutes left in the Super Bowl or if it's 2 minutes before half in a regular season game. If it's a hold, you got to call it. And give that ref credit. He called it. So, Chiefs favorite next year? Right now, I know a lot's,
um,
but what do you think? Right off, just top of the.
yeah, I mean, it's hard to say not the Chiefs. They're starting to get like the 2000s Patriots vibes where it's
Yeah,
like you don't want to say that they're going to win because there's other teams that might have a little more hype, but it seems like they're just always there at the end.
yeah,
They've
yeah,
been now in the AFC title game for the last 5 years. They've been to 3 out of the last 5 Super Bowls. So part of me says, yeah. Um, but like I could see some of these teams like that are on the cusp kind of making bigger moves and could definitely shake up the way that the not just the AFC but all of NFL could look.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I mean, Kenny, 38-35 in a Super Bowl game. You can't. I mean, what else can we ask for, right? I thought it was a great game. First Super Bowl in a long time. For a lot of folks that may listen didn't know, I had COVID last week, so I apologize for my voice still this morning, as still some lingering effects. But that's the first Super Bowl I think since 1999 that I watched by myself. I was sitting at in our other home here by myself watching the Super Bowl, but it was a great game. Really enjoyed it. I want to weave in two quick stories here as we talk about the intersection of sports and faith, and there were two really obvious ones that intersected here. The first was Damar Hamlin being on the field and some sort of controversy about his jacket, which I don't quite understand, and maybe you can shed some light on it. But Adrian Peterson, and I'm not going to throw shade on Adrian Peterson. He's entitled to his own opinion, but he called it out saying it was blasphemous, and then Damar does apologize for the jacket. What was that all about?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the jacket. I
Yeah,
think it's a little exaggerated. Um, but basically like the it's a picture of Jesus on the cross and just like his like facial expression was kind of weird and also like he was all yellow, which I don't know if that was part of the
yeah,
controversy. Um I don't I think it's one of those things where like he was trying to say like God created us and like God helped like through like basically trying to tell the story of salvation.
yeah,
Um but because of the way that it looked, a lot of people saw it as a little like blasphemous or like sacrilegious. And
yeah.
he had said like basically I just thought like I saw it just as like an expression of art, but I
Right.
don't want to I don't want to cause any issues. So
Yeah.
I totally get like his side and all, but it is to me it was a little ticky tacky too.
Okay. All right. It was odd. Here's a guy who's represented you know, his faith in just this unbelievable way, right? On the biggest stage over these last couple of months or so, 6, 7 weeks since this happened, and he gets called out for wearing a jacket. I guess you got to be careful on stuff like that. I do get it. Um, and abstract art, I think, is what he said, is the expression that he said. I guess you got to be careful on that. I don't guess you should be careful on that, right? Because we definitely don't want to depict what happened on the cross in any other way than what we've seen it and the way it's depicted in the Bible. Uh, that being said, I would just say give this kid a break. Oh my gosh. I mean, come on. What he's gone through. And, it probably was a lack of judgment on on himself. And I think most people have. I think more people jumped on Adrian Peterson for calling him out publicly instead of maybe sending him a message, privately or whatever. But I don't know. It's none of us have walked in that kid's shoes at 24 years old and where he's at. And there's now a little controversy on how he sort of didn't answer the question as to the doctors tell him why he had this cardiac arrest thing at that moment. He got asked that and he wouldn't answer it, and it's probably a privacy thing. I don't think it would have even been appropriate to answer it. So we'll see how that turns out. Maybe there is a point where he gets with his doctors, he gets with the NFL, and I can't imagine him playing again, by the way. I have, now that, he's got his life back, it's hard for me to picture him playing again. What do you think?
I could see it being like a one and done type of thing
Yeah.
where he's just like there for to say like, oh, I got back on the field.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Alex Smith.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, cuz also maybe that's part of cuz like the doctors, I remember there was one doctor that said, "Oh yeah, he'll definitely play again." But maybe like after getting like second opinions and stuff, they're like, well,
I don't know.
like you'd be risking your life if you go out there again.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I think also like, especially for like his story and like the like just kind of the arc of what could happen with him, I think having him go out, even if it's for a snap or a series, I could see that. But I don't know. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
if I were him, I'd be very, very leery. But
Yeah, if he has a team of doctors that say, "Hey, you are at zero risk," I don't know how anybody would ever say that, or they say the risk is very, very, very minimal, which is probably more likely, right, for them to say. Then it's probably the decision is up to him. I'd rather he not play again, just because maybe there was something in his background that did trigger this event. Who knows? Again, only the doctors know, and they're not going to say, they're not obliged to say, they shouldn't. This is private matter, I think. Let me get to the other where we saw Faith on the big stage here, and that was, we've talked about for the last few weeks, the Max Lucado He Gets Us Super Bowl ads, and I enjoyed both of them. One got played pretty early in the game, and that was the one with the little kids, and I saw that one before, but I thought that was pretty cool. And then one got played very late in the game, and that was a lot of folks that are disagreeing, and Jesus showing the way on how we should have disagreements. It's about Jesus. He gets us. There's nothing off on it. There's nothing non-scriptural about it. It's trying to show people that because Jesus came and walked with us and was a human in flesh and went through the things that we went through, that he does get us, right? And so I thought all was good, although I was seeing a few days before some articles popping up on how this was funded. So there's a couple of quick schools of thoughts, anxious to get your thoughts on it. A couple of quick schools of thought is one, paying $20 million from a lot of donors, that $20 million could have went to a lot of other different, causes. Of course, $20 million can go towards, world hunger and so many things that money is needed for. So I get that, right? But then a lot of controversy on where the money came from very, very conservative groups that maybe, anti this or anti that, or maybe viewed as exclusive and not inclusive. And I suppose Max Lucado could have, looked at where a lot of money was coming from and vetted that a little bit more. Probably that wasn't his main focus. He probably wanted to get the message out there. I'm just speculating here. um, David Green, who certainly played a big part in your life in terms of the donations he made to the colleges that you went to, the president of Hobby Lobby, who can be viewed in a couple of different ways. Let's just face it. I think, there are folks that view that, hey, he's terrific and very generous in what he does. And then there are some folks that say, he's not inclusive. And so I'm curious your thoughts. I know he came up as one of the big donors for funders for these commercials. I just feel like this, man. There's got to be somebody out there, Kenny, that saw these commercials and got curious and said, let me find out a little bit more about Jesus. And maybe they professed and turned their life over to the Lord. And to me, then everything else is out the window. If one soul came to the Lord, I'm just saying one, I think it was probably many. Um, then some of this other stuff, I don't know. For me, it's just kind of stuff. I don't know how else to say it. What were your thoughts on it?
yeah, well, I'll start kind of where you're picking up there. Because another thing with the He Gets Us campaign that I've learned about is that like um churches can register as part of it. Like our network has like a thing where you can add yourself to it, and um so like let's say you are at a Super Bowl party with people that don't know who Jesus is, and like that could be the start of sparking a conversation.
Yeah.
Um and really like in that way, like that's one of the more authentic ways that people learn more about Jesus anyway. Like people aren't gonna just a lot of times just roll into the doors of a church. A lot
Yeah.
of times it comes straight from like someone that they know and like someone that like they care about telling them about it. So um yes, the $20 million probably could have been used in a bunch of different ways. But you could say that about a lot of things. Um Also, there's a chance, I don't know this for sure because I mean I wasn't there, but like sometimes with when people are giving funding like that, sometimes it has to go to a specific thing that they direct it to.
Right.
So if let's say they were like, we want this funding to go to advertising to get the word out, like they would have had no choice but to do it for advertising. So
Yep. Yep.
um this is kind of like one of like the nonprofit aspects of it. Um as far as like the like where the funding is coming from, to me it's a little too much to say, oh well, like this person does not like this group or that group. Like wherever funding is coming from, there's going to be people that don't necessarily hold the same beliefs as you.
Yeah.
And to me, to like throw everything out because of that is just, to me, it's a little too much.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of, I think part of what's happening is because the campaign was like so out there and very, very like strong pro Jesus. People that don't like Jesus are trying to think of any way they can to strike it down.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. Because like you said, if one person got saved from it, it was worth it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
if people start going to church more, like it's worth it. I
Yeah.
don't know how much you've been following the whole thing in Asbury University down in Kentucky.
Yes.
Um, there's been like a revival going on there,
Yeah.
which ironically, there was a previous revival in the '70s, right? Like a few days after the Chiefs won the Super Bowl again.
Right.
So,
Right. Right.
so like I don't know. I think people tend to try to focus on like the minimal things to just strike stuff down, but I don't know. God's up to something.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I think revival is happening right in front of us. And, we've been talking about that a lot here in our church on Sundays. And I think this is a part of it. Was it like, were they up to like 176 straight hours of prayer there or something like that I
Yeah.
saw? Um, and but a lot of people aren't aware of that, and this could be part of that revival that I know is happening. I feel it. There is no way you could have if you would have mentioned to me 5 years ago, if I remember right, and we'll jump into baseball in a second, but if I remember right, maybe 5 6 years ago, there was the Tim Tebow ad where he
Oh yeah.
yeah, he talked about very openly how his parents were that close to aborting him, right? And outside of that, I could not remember in my lifetime anything remotely, Christian that was a commercial, let alone not in the Super Bowl, but even on TV. Unless you're watching late at night and there's an advertisement for a church or something like that. Outside of that, it's rare, to see. Now, we jump from that to having two 60-second ads in the Super Bowl, and those aren't free, unfortunately, right? You would think, okay, we can give the Christian folks a little bit of a discount. They were like, no, you're going to pay just like everybody else did. And so if that doesn't show you that there's something going on, right? There's some sort of movement, whether you want to believe
Hmm.
like there's revival or you want to say, well, maybe people are just curious, whatever. There's something, there's something that's brewing, and so to me, the other stuff, it's not like the money was funded through drug dealers or something like that. I mean, uh, if you disagree with a group, that is you definitely have that right, or say, hey, this group traditionally has not included us in their ministry. I get that, that's your right to say so. Therefore, the money shouldn't have came from there, but I think there's sometimes these distractions that take us away from the big picture, and the big picture is what you said. there's something going on in our country. There really is. And it's good. I think it's good. There's a lot of people I'm sure that don't, but I, as a believer, as a pastor, it's good. I don't even know how else to put that. We'll let you have the final word on that.
Um, I mean, yeah, like if you get so caught up in the details of things like this, then like you're really missing the bigger picture. It's like even with like some of the revival stuff, I've seen people like kind of talk about like, well, I don't know if this is real or not. Why is that mattering right now? Like why are you making a big deal out of these smaller things? It just kind of tries to take away from what's actually happening.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. And there is a movie I think about what you talked about. I think the Jesus Revolution is a movie that I'm not sure if it's out yet. I think it comes out either later this month or early March. That talks about when there was revival in the late '60s, early '70s. Hey, let's jump over to baseball. And I don't know, man. The Yankees, did they know about Montas? Did they know about his injury? Because I know he didn't. He was hurt. It seemed like when they got him, but were they expecting that he was going to be out for the year? And for those that may not know what I'm talking about, the Yankees, one of their pitchers that they got in a big trade at the trading deadline, looks like he needs surgery, is going to be out for the year. Therefore, that leaves the Yankees a little bit short, especially in this competitive division. So they're going to have to go out and get somebody. We could talk about that in a second as well. But what happened? And what's the Yankees' next steps here?
Yeah, I don't know. Because he had before they had acquired him, he had I think gone 2 starts, but previous to that, he was on the injured list with some kind of shoulder issue. Um, and then obviously he when he came to, he was like he had had a death in the family, so he was on the bereavement list for like a week and a half. So like it had been like 20 something days between starts from his last start from the A's and his first start with the Yankees. And then like he was okay for a couple starts, and then like he had the shoulder issue. But then also like it seemed like it was kind of better because he made a postseason appearance. Um, but now, yeah, he's having surgery, I believe, sometime next week, and there's a chance he could be out for the year. They said they won't really know until they actually get in there. Um, but I don't know. I'm worried about getting them 2020, 2021 vibes where everyone's getting hurt. Because also Nestor Cortez is backed out of the World Baseball Classic because of a grade 2 hamstring strain, which like that's the part that kind of worries me a little bit more. But also, if you're gonna have something, have it in February as opposed to having it in September.
Yeah, they need him.
Um,
They need him as well. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. As far as what the Yankees do, um, I don't know. Part of me says that they're not going to get a starter right away. I've seen somewhere that they're not looking to try to get a starter at the trade market. They might try to do it a little bit more internally because right now their rotation would be I'm going to assume Cortez will be ready for the regular season. You have Cole, Rodon, Cortez, Severino, and probably Domingo Herman.
Yeah,
Um, he's out of options, so knowing the way the Yankees operate, they would probably put him over Clark Schmidt. But you also have Clark Schmidt who could step in there if needed. Um, they have a few other guys that are on the 40-man roster that'll probably be guys that'll get your spot starts because I mean they say it all the time. I think David Cohn's one of the main guys that says it. Yes, you have a 5-man rotation, but really you need like 9 guys that you can rely on because someone's gonna get hurt. You're gonna have rainouts. You're gonna have double headers. Like you
yeah,
need guys that can kind of step in there.
yeah,
And I think
yeah,
that's one of my concerns with this Yankee team is like their top 4, top 5 guys are really, really good. Um, you could be looking at like one of the best rotations in baseball.
yeah,
However, if someone gets hurt, I don't know what they do.
yeah.
Um, like Davy Garcia would probably be an option, but after being like very hyped up a few years ago, he really has been awful.
Fell off the map.
Um,
Yeah,
oh
yeah,
yeah. Um, there's a few other guys like Luis Heel who came up last year. he has Tommy John surgery, so he's probably out of the plans for this year, at least for the first half. Um, there's a few other guys like Johnny Brito, who I think might make a couple starts.
Right.
There's other guys kind of that I don't really know about, but they might make a spot start or whatever. But um, I do think they need another arm. I know someone had thrown out, "Hey, you should check out Trevor Bauer." I don't think the Yankees would go that route.
Yeah, let's go
Um,
there for a second. That was Evan Roberts, who we
yeah,
love. Evan Roberts here in New York on FAN made that suggestion either for the Yankees or the Mets. Um, we've talked about him a lot, and I think we both evolved a little bit. And I listen, I think that from a guy perspective, right? He certainly can get a second chance. I think anyone deserves a second chance in life. That being said, I would be stunned. This would be one of the things that would shock me the most in sports ever if either the Yankees or Mets went out and signed him in this market, in this atmosphere. I would be stunned. Could the Yankees use Trevor Bauer more than the Mets? I think the Yankees could. Just Trevor Bauer without all the other stuff. Trevor Bauer just the pitcher, of course. The Mets would never touch him for a couple of reasons. One is I think this, but the other is how he kind of left them. Thank goodness he did. How he kind of left them at the altar a few years ago. They're not calling him up. Um, so I don't know if you feel the same way. I just
Um, well, I'll say a few things here. First of all, the Yankees have done something kind of similar
yeah.
with the Aroldis Chapman.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
he did
Yes. Yes.
have,
Point.
but his was a little bit like it was a little less extreme. Now he still was firing a gun in his garage because he was upset, but um, he didn't send anyone to the hospital allegedly. Um, but also like I don't know if they'd be willing to do it because here's my biggest thing with him. Yes, he brings a lot of baggage. Um, and I think the Yankees, as far as like a fit for him, would probably work because Matt Blake, their pitching coach, was I don't think he was a pitching coach, but he was on the staff of the Indians back in the day when you had Trevor Bauer on there, Mike Clevenger, and those guys. So
Right.
like I think that there would be a in there. He's like we talked before about him being like the guy that you need someone that's going to advocate for you in the room. I don't know if Matt Blake would do that,
Yeah.
but
Maybe.
um, but also like Trevor Bauer hasn't pitched since the sticky stuff like has happened, and he's been kind of open about that. Like he's used it and like probably won a Cy Young because of it. So like, do I think that he's very meticulous about his craft? Like if you look on his Twitter, like all the different things that he does to help like increase velocity, increase speed rate, and things like that. But still, I would get a little nervous for that reason as well.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if he plays somewhere this year unless like a big team loses like a big piece. So like let's say, God forbid, Garrett Cole goes down with an injury, or Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer go down. Jacob DeGrom out in Texas gets hurt, and the Texas Rangers are in first place.
Yeah.
Framber Valdez out in Houston. Like, if you get like a really significant injury, you might see that, but I'd be surprised if he plays this year.
Yeah. And listen, there's cultural differences across our country, and I think in a any of the big cities that you may have named, I can't see it happening. Because there would be groups that would be lined up waiting outside the stadium to protest, and you would see sponsors pull out. I mean, there's just a lot of big in the big parts of the country. I want to tie in, I have a solution for you and your team, and I'll tie in that it would probably be also not a bad landing spot for Trevor Bauer, the Milwaukee Brewers. I don't know if you've been up to date on which is why arbitration in baseball has gone less and less over the years, because it's a terrible way of solving it. It's fair, right? Because it's a objective person, but you have the team that has to now come to the table and say all of these things that's wrong with this player, why we want to pay them what we want to pay them because they didn't do this, or this. And so it doesn't really help with relationships. Thus, I get to, what was it, 2 years ago, Cy Young Award winner Corbin Burns. He right now, based on the arbitration case and he has been openly, said how bitter he is. He hasn't requested a trade, but he's like, I had no idea that this team felt this way about me, that he feels crazy underappreciated and everything. So let's tie it in here. I'm Brian Cashman. I'm picking up the phone. What do you want? This guy's a big time pitcher. Now, can he pitch in New York? Probably. I don't know that, but he's a big time pitcher, and he's been good for several years. There is no way that I think that he will sign with the Brewers when he's up for free agency, which I think is after next season. So trade him now. I don't know. The Brewers definitely are a contender, for the year, but that is one of those small towns. And I don't know what it would take for the Yankees to get him. I think he fit in perfectly into the Yankee rotation. Part B of that is that probably would be a good landing spot for Trevor Bauer because it is a relatively small city. It might be a city where they may not get the type of protests that they would get in LA or New York or whatever. So anyway, that's my solution for you. What do you think?
I love that solution. I think that's perfect. And I'll throw out a trade proposal here. So you might have to add it. Well, no. I would say Gleyber Torres, one of the young shortstops, whether you're talking Peraza, Cabrera. I don't think the Yankees would trade Volpe because I think they really like him. Oh, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. There you go.
It's gonna take Torres and a couple of other top prospects to get him, though. That's the thing. It'll because they'll ride that out. They don't have to trade. He hasn't requested a trade. He's just very, very, very unhappy. When we're done today, go check out, just Google Corbin Burns and you'll see what I'm talking about. There's some strong language on his part after this arbitration case. But the Brewers are it's gonna take a haul to get him. He's one of the top pitchers in the game.
Yeah. Well, and the Yankees get him like that like 1 through 5 is untouchable.
And you're not worried about anything, and then they could maybe go out and kick the tires with Trevor Bauer, because again, that would be a place where, where he would, I don't know. I think he'd fly a little bit under the radar there. And that's hard to kind of fathom, right? How this has been so high profile, how he would fly a little bit under the radar. But I think he would there. And that might be his second chance that he could use. And that team is going to contend. The Brewers, not without Corbin and without replacing him with a good pitcher, they won't. But with him and the pitching that they have there, they contended last year. I think it was 4 or 5 straight years they had made the playoffs until last year. But they'll get back there. They've got a good team. But
yeah,
I read something at Brewers also. I'm sorry that they have one of the worst TV contracts in the league. They really, their revenue is solely on attendance, and if their attendance is down, they just don't make any revenue. Go ahead, you were gonna say something. I'm sorry.
No, and it's funny because it's one of the bigger fears about bringing your guys up to arbitration anyway. Remember, there was that awkward tension because obviously with the lockout last year, the Aaron Judge arbitration, they didn't come to an agreement until literally hours before.
Yeah.
Imagine if they went to arbitration with him. There's a good chance he's not a Yankee right now.
Well, because the team has to be. This is why we don't want to pay this guy. He doesn't hustle. He doesn't whatever. They have to point out all the negative stats, and every player has some negative stats, even Aaron Judge or Corbin Burns. So it's a terrible. But baseball they've had that system for a long time, and there's been some guys that you've seen leave once they're eligible to leave. baseball players, it's been said, right? They have long memories, and we see that sometimes somebody might get hit by a pitch and on opening day, and like in September, there's retaliation. Baseball players do have long memories. Go ahead. I want to ask you about the new rules, and I want you to break those down real quick for us, and 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 I want to hear where you think they're going to have the most impact.
Yeah, so here's a few of the new rules. Also, I believe MLB, like on their website, they have it somewhere. But so the first one, it's not really a new rule, but scheduling is completely different this year. Every team will play every other team.
Hate that. Sorry, I hate it. Go ahead.
Yeah, like there's gonna be a couple of like fun, interesting things. So like you'll always have a World Series rematch. We've talked about that before.
Yes. Yes.
Um, but then also like the Giants are heading to Yankee Stadium. Arson Judge and the Giants are heading to the Yankee Stadium. So that'll be interesting. The team that lost out on all the free agents this year. But yeah, so next thing, I think this is probably the most impactful one, the pitch clock.
Yes.
15 seconds from when you get the ball to throwing it when there's nobody on, 20 seconds when there's runners on base. Which I think, and also it's not just with the pitchers, but also with the hitters. If the pitcher isn't throwing the ball or isn't ready to throw it, it's an automatic ball. If the batter isn't in the batter's box, it's an automatic strike. Which like to me can make for some weird situations.
Yep.
It's like imagine a guy striking out because he's not in the batter's box. And like it just I don't know, it could be interesting. Nomar would hate it.
Oh gosh, Bernie Williams.
Yeah. Joe McEwing, another one.
Oh, we can go on and on. Oh my goodness.
So I think that's a big one. This is also another big one is the shift is gone.
Yeah. Love
Two
that.
you have to have two infielders on the dirt on each side of second base. Somewhere Joey Gallo continues to rejoice. He's been very open about the shift. I look at like, for example, the Yankees. I think that's gonna really, really help a guy like Anthony Rizzo, who lost a lot of ground balls to the shift.
Yeah.
Larger bases are in play. I don't know if you've seen the pictures of them. They are like significantly bigger.
No, like pizza. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the hope there is to increase stolen bases. The stolen base leader last year was John Birdie, who had 41. It was only, I believe, 4 or 5 years ago that Rajai Davis had 70. So they're hoping that with like the shorter distance, like that can make a huge difference. Also, they say it helps with player safety, like piloting these in the minors. They've noticed less injuries as a
Yeah.
result of like having like the bigger base. A couple that have been kind of added in there. So the ever so hated Ghost Runner for extra innings, the second runner on second, is now officially permanent.
Yeah.
The last 2 years, like for COVID, they were like, we need to like shorten games so there's less time of like exposure. And then last year they wanted to shorten games because of the lockout. They don't want pitchers getting hurt, especially
Right.
early on. But now they've officially voted in. It's a permanent rule. You're gonna have men on second moving forward.
How about the seven? How about the 7 inning doubleheader?
7 inning doubleheader is not there anymore.
Oh, good. Okay.
That's a thing in the past. That's a COVID thing.
Okay.
But it is also only in the regular season. Still in the postseason, you have your full
No ghost runner.
no ghost runner. So, which like you saw the difference because in the first two extra inning games, they went like 18 and
I
15
know.
innings. So,
Had those 5-6 hour games.
so yeah. Last thing that I'll talk about here. This was like very recently adopted is the position players pitching because it was a lot last year, and it was also just like it's not fun watching
No.
a random position player go out and throw 35-mile-an-hour strikes.
Oh,
Um, so they adopted a new rule that position players can only come in when a team is up by 10 runs in the ninth inning, or they're down by 8 runs throughout the entire game, 8 or more, I should say. And also they can come in during extra innings. So like, now that doesn't mean, because you can still like, people are like, oh well, what about Shohei Ohtani? First of all, Shohei is a starting pitcher usually. He doesn't come in
right.
relief.
Yeah.
And he's also designated as a two-way player. So he's really the only one that would do that. Because like people are like, oh well, like no one else is pitching and hitting.
Yeah.
If they wanted position players to also pitch outside of that, they would have to be like designated as a two-way player. But I doubt that anyone would actually do that.
No, no, no. Listen, I hate that. I hate when somebody comes in and it makes a mockery of the game. You know what I mean? I think.
Yeah.
um,
Well, it's like playing like softball, like
well, yeah,
I remember it was the game, the Yankees and Pirates, and Giancarlo Stanton hits a grand slam off of a position player. And even like the Pirates announcer like, "Oh, come on." Like it just like, and but also it's worse for like the hitters, because like hitters get paid based on their stats. But like you're padding stats against like guys that don't know how to pitch. It just
yeah, yeah, yeah. Overall, I think I like the rules. um, Ghost Runner, I was very I don't know. I was shaky on that. But the games have gotten way too long. I think if you love baseball, really the time doesn't really matter because that's part of the beauty of baseball. But it's tough in at any age, young, old, whatever, to sit there from 7 at night to devote your whole night to a game, and it's just hard. It's gotten harder over the years. It's hard for people that want to go to a Tuesday or Wednesday game and they have to work the next morning. You know what I mean? It's just hard. So anything that's going to speed it up a little bit, I think can't be a bad thing. I never liked pitchers that take too long. I loved Steve Traxel was an excellent pitcher for the Mets for a couple of years. But boy, oh boy, remember what his nickname was? The human
the
rain
walking rain delay. Yeah.
rain delay. Come on, man, just throw it. Let's get in there. Don't. Why are you stepping out of the box too for that long? Just you should have a plan when you go up, right? Okay, he's probably going to throw me a first pitch fastball. It's probably going to be on the outside corner. Yeah, I mean, there's players that do their homework instead of just really thinking about all of that right there in the batter's box. So I'm anxious. I'm going to be anxious to hear our friend, your brother-in-law, Trevor. I'm going to be anxious to hear his take on it because he obviously is very much a student of the game. So we got to ask him and maybe get him on.
Yeah.
Uh, hey, let's. This is going to be interesting. We'll talk a lot more baseball over these next couple of weeks. Um, let's jump in real quick to the NBA because you're wearing your New York Knicks garb, and the Knicks are playing extremely well. And we'll jump to the NBA here real quick. You know who else is playing extremely well is the Milwaukee Bucks. They are right there now. I think only a game behind the Celtics. They beat them the other night. That's obviously the two top teams in the East. But the Knicks aren't going to be an easy out, man. And in the playoffs, I think the Knicks will be right there. I think Knicks will get up there enough to not be in the play-in. The other quick thing is, the Lakers and their reshaped roster looks pretty good, but they're coming from quite the hole that's hard to make up. So I don't think that they'll avoid the play-in. But also, I wanted to get your take on, Russell Westbrook, Patrick Beverley, some of these good players, Kevin Love, that looks like Kevin Love's to say he's going to get brought out, and he's gone. He is gone. Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
just about.
where are some of these guys going?
I don't know. As far as Kevin Love goes, there's been talk of um like there's rumors with the Suns, there's rumors with the Heat. Um uh People have also kind of thrown out, oh, he should go to LA and join LeBron out there with the Lakers. I don't know. I think this because like there's the trade deadline, but then there's the time a little bit after the trade deadline that's also very intriguing
Yeah.
because Russell Westbrook can be very interesting for a team. I feel like I feel like he's gonna end up on a team that isn't that good, but he could definitely like put up the stats like oh let's see like a team say like I would have said Utah, but maybe like a team like Orlando or Charlotte,
Yeah.
like one of these teams that like April's going to be a bad month as far as ticket sales, but Russell Westbrook can bring the ticket sales.
Yeah.
Um, I think Patrick Beverly, like, I don't know, he's a weird guy in general. Like all I think of his giant celebration after winning the playing game with Minnesota last year. Like it was just also a weird fit for him with the Lakers.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Maybe if a team loses a guy, especially like a more defensive minded guy, they might go after him. Um, but it will be interesting because over the next couple weeks here, um, teams have to kind of finalize who's going to be on the
Yeah.
postseason roster.
Watch first. Yeah. 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 I feel bad for Westbrook that teams aren't just falling over themselves to get him. I think they're a little bit leery. I know the Bulls, right? They're saying would be a good fit. The Clippers would be a good fit, but I don't know, man. I don't know. I see some of those younger teams that you mentioned. Do you want to take away minutes from some of these younger players, by playing a guy who's only going to be with you for like 25 something games? But if you're a title contender, it's probably worth taking a flyer on him. I'm not sure that, you put him on the Bulls if they're a title contender either. So it's difficult, man. I don't really honestly have a landing spot for him right now. You know, it's if it was like a little earlier in the season, yeah, I think one of those younger teams, I think that would be a really good idea because he could elevate them as well. Especially a team like Charlotte that'll probably get in, to the playoffs. Um, and he would probably be a difference maker. But this late in the season, man, the NBA with the All-Star break, it seems like that's come later and later over the last few years. Maybe that's my imagination, but that used to seem like it was more the halfway point. But it's like season's really like three-quarters of the way gone now, it
Yeah.
yeah. So real quick now, let me get your opinion on how you feel the Knicks are doing right now.
I think they're doing great. I'm liking the direction they're going in. And you also look at the East right now, they're the sixth seed. Um, Ahead of them is that team in Brooklyn, who knows how long they're going to stay ahead of them. But they've also been playing well too.
They've been playing
So,
well. Yeah, yeah, they've been playing well.
um, but it's interesting because it seems like this team is like I feel like Josh Hart is really fit in really well. Which we kind of talked about that last week.
Yeah,
Um, and I don't know, just once again, I look at this team as opposed to the Nets. Like, would I have thought Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, and RJ Barrett would have been better than Zion Williamson, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving? No,
yeah,
but
they
like
have been.
hindsight is 2020, and I don't
Yeah,
know. I think avoiding the playing game is always good because you never know what's going to happen.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, like, do I think that they can make a giant playoff run? I mean, I say Milwaukee and Boston are like I would be surprised if one of those two teams aren't the team in the finals. But I don't know. You never know. Like, could the Knicks make a very interesting series with the Cavs? First of all,
Oh,
I would try to go to one of those games in Cleveland.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
but
definitely. Yeah, yeah. I,
like, could they win a couple
yeah,
games with Philly? Yeah, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah. Well, those three teams that you named, right? Bucks, Celtics, Bucks, 76ers. Outside of those three teams, I think anybody else in the Knicks in the East, the Knicks could play with and maybe steal a series. I really do. Um, I
Yeah,
think they're just now really gelling, as a team, and Josh Hart is fitting like a glove here, man. So I'm really really excited right now. This is the most I've been excited now for a couple of years, several years. I'm a little bit even more excited than that 41-31 team a few years ago because of Jalen Brunson and what he brings to the table. And I've just never seen a player improve the way he has, And I mean, he's hitting 3-pointers now too. He's just like, and he keeps that team under control. It's clearly become his team. Listen, Julius Randle is still, just a walking double double every night, but it's clearly Brunson's team, and RJ
Yeah.
needs to switch this game. I'm not sure what's going on with RJ, but all right. We're we had so much to talk about today. So, and we're trying not to rush this because we want to get to Tim McCarver and some inspiration. And so, your thoughts when you heard that Tim McCarver passed away yesterday?
Um, I think of him as one of like the voices of like a lot of the bigger games I remember growing up, like
Yeah,
all the World Series. I'd seen a thing yesterday, calling the 2011 World Series with David Freese was like one of his like most iconic ones.
yeah.
Also, it still hurts, but the 2001 they showed like the full clip of Luis Gonzalez's at bat and saying like, with this drawn in infield, Mariano Rivera tends to do a lot of shallow fly balls to lefties. So this isn't a good idea. And then
Oh
sure enough, like
gosh, yes, yes, I remember
um
that. Yeah,
so yeah, like definitely a guy that'll be missed. And like when I hear his voice, I think of like big Saturday baseball games in the
yeah,
90s.
yeah, yeah. Well, and so I'll be real quick. I got some stats, so I'll be quick on there. I agree. Listen, he was, I thought, a great announcer, probably in my time, the best analyst, and I'll put him up there. I think Tony Kubek was right there, but McCarver just did it longer, and and like you said, man, just how like Joe Buck, you rarely see him on back in his days at Fox, you'd rarely see him on just a regular Saturday afternoon game. McCarver was always, he never missed a game. And during all that time, he was the Mets announcer for 15 years, from 83 to 98. And it was really controversial when he left because he was very critical of some things on the team, and supposedly the Wilpons didn't like that. And then he went to, do Yankee games for 3 years, and still all that being on the national stage. But I want to real quick talk about his playing career because that gets a little bit lost. And so he's a two-time All-Star. He was a catcher, but he was on some championship teams in the 60s. And 1964 was one of his first really big years. 66 and 67 is when he made the All-Star team. Um, in 1964, he batted 288, 9 homers, 52 RBIs. But here's one of the stats that was really consistent for him. He struck out only 44 times. He was just this
Wow.
contact, and in 64, I want to say game 5 of the World Series, he hit a walk-off home run to win, to win. That's not a good, you wouldn't remember that anyway, that World Series, but not a good memory for the Yankees because they look at that as like the end of that big era that they had, because the Cardinals won that World Series in 7 games, and then the Yankees fired their manager and hired the Cardinals manager in the offseason, Johnny Keane, which was kind of weird. 1966, he also had a great year. He led the league in triples as a catcher, 13 triples. So he was one of those first catchers that had a lot of speed. 1967, this I'm sure you didn't know. Did you know that he finished second in the MVP voting that year? And he got a lot of
Wow.
them. Orlando Cepeda of the Cardinals won the MVP that year, and McCarver finished second. He batted 295. He had 14 homers, 69 RBIs. He only struck out 32 times. Again, stats like that for a catcher, and he was not good. He was a great defensive catcher. Um, and certainly, he's also known for, handling the pitching staffs, Bob Gibson, as well as then Steve Carlton. 1968, 253, 5 homers, 48 RBIs. He only struck out 31 times. 1969, 260, 7 homers, 51 RBIs. He struck out only 26 times. Now 1969 is his last first run. He played with the Cardinals briefly again in the 70s, but this is his last first run with the Cardinals. He batted 260, 7 homers, 51 RBIs. Um, and then in that offseason, he was part of the Kurt Flood trade to the Phillies, the historic trade. He didn't want to go either, but he went. And, he played well with the Phillies. He bounced around a little bit, played briefly with the Expos, briefly with the Red Sox, wound up back with the Phillies, where he finished his career because Steve Carlton wanted him back, and Steve Carlton wanted him to be his personal catcher. And so from 76 to 1980, he was Steve Carlton's personal catcher. Excellent player. Wouldn't have made the Hall of Fame as a player, but certainly made the Hall of Fame as a broadcaster. One of the things that I probably talked on this before. One of the things that he's known for as a player, he had a grand slam single. I think we talked about that before. He hit a home run, and I remember this because it was against the Mets. He hit a home run that barely went out of the park, but he's got his head down and he's running. Gary Maddox, who's a really fast player for the Phillies, is doing the right thing. He's only playing it halfway. McCarver, not knowing, he passes him on the base path, and the umpires call it a single. And so he's got a grand slam single, sort of like Robin Ventura, in the playoffs, but that different circumstances. And he always made fun of himself there, for that. But you said the stats, 24 World Series. I think it's more than that for All-Star games. And when baseball jumped around from different networks, the first thing they did, they'd sign him. When it went from NBC to CBS signed him, and then CBS to Fox signed him. And obviously, he had where he didn't get along that great with Jack Buck, and people were leery when they teamed him with Joe Buck, but they became extremely close, great friends over the years. Obviously, a huge age gap, in the two of them. But McCarver was just great. He brought enthusiasm to the game all the time. He knew the game, I think, better than a lot of managers. He could, and he was able to paint that picture as you're watching, the game, because he wasn't stuffy at all. He was just seemed like he was just, sort of like Tony Romo. You're sitting next to a regular guy, but the guy was just great. He knew the game. Didn't have a traditional voice, either for sports, but just phenomenal. He's definitely going to be missed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we could jump into some inspiration. I'll start real quick since we're on the subject of McCarver, and you'll finish us off. So different era, right? The Cardinals had quite a few black players. In fact, they had the most black players of any team in that era in the National and American League. Lou Brock, Kurt Flood, Bob Gibson, to name a few, several Latin players, Bill White, Orlando Cepeda, who I believe was traded for Bill White. But and so McCarver came up. Did you know this? He was 17 years old because he's known for playing in the 4 different decades. By the way, I think I wrote that he was the only one. There's several other guys that have done that, but nobody of recent. But he came up in 1959 and only 17 years old, played only a few games, nonetheless played in that decade, and he finished his career with only 6 games in 1980. But McCarver grew up in Tennessee, and this is stuff that he talked about very openly over the years and in his book, that he grew up kind of in a racist community. He did not know any black people. He was very open about how he used the N-word in his youth. And when he came up to the Cardinals, they have a lot of black players, and he had never been around black people before. And it was Bob Gibson. A turning point was they were on the road somewhere, and there's a kid trying to, climb over a fence and was going to jump onto train tracks, and there was a train coming, and the Cardinal players, they were out getting ready to go to dinner, and they yelled to the kid not to do that, and McCarver calls him a little N-word and says, "Hey, get off the fence, you little N-word." And Bob Gibson jumps in his face right away and schools him and tells him that's not proper. And I'm sure it was stronger language than that, right? They almost get into a fist fight. And that was a turning point. McCarver always said in his life that he then became just super friends. Him and Bob Gibson were friends throughout the years, well after their playing careers were over. And there was an understanding. He became a student to understand what the other black players were going through, Kurt Flood and Lou Brock, and how even in that time they would go on the road to some places they weren't welcome, to eat in certain places. And McCarver would then be the first person that would take up for them or almost get into fights, sure that they could eat and stay in the same hotel and everything. And so there was just an understanding. He couldn't help his upbringing, couldn't help where he was brought up at, but he took the time to understand and get to know the black culture. And I think that served him well over the years as he became this broadcaster that everyone could relate to. So I thought that was inspirational. And the fact that he talked about it very openly over the years and his friendship with Bob Gibson, I think was very, very inspirational. So he's going to be missed. What you got, man?
All right, so I want to talk real quick about newest Yankee free agent acquisition, Carlos Rodon.
Yeah.
So something that I thought was kind of interesting, Yankee fans kind of being funny Yankee fans, were Venmoing Rodon as a way of encouraging him to come to New York. This was before they had signed him. This is like, hey, come here, like, we'll give you money. So obviously Rodon gets the big payday, 8 years, $160+ million. And so he tells, like, people asked him, so like, what did you do with that Venmo money? And so he goes into the story. This is one of Pitchers and Catchers reported a couple days ago, so it's one of the first stories that he tells. He has a house kind of in the remote areas of Indiana. Him and his brother and his cousin are like, they do a lot of hunting. They're crossing from Indiana to Illinois, and they notice like this young boy, and they see him like a few times as they go on like these various hunting trips. And then one time they noticed that they didn't see him, and they didn't see the house that he was in. And so they do a little bit more research and find out that this little kid's house burned down. So he used all of this Venmo money to go and help this this little boy. It was like right around Christmas time. Like they build a new house to get him a nice Christmas and everything. So he says, look, Yankee fans are the best fans in the world. They helped this little boy in remote Illinois have a house for Christmas. So
what an amazing story. And why is that not a big story? That should be a big story. Wow. What an amazing story. Oh, God bless him, man. That is fantastic. All right, bud. Take us home.
All right. This is Kenny Squared N.
Kenny.
With Sports on the Positive Tips. We'll see you guys next week.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we'll be back with a very, very special guest in just a bit.
Yep.